Dude, we don't want to make this too like interviewy, but obviously you with the podcast and your kind of career the past, I'd say, especially during COVID, I'd say the past 2 years, like you guys are just on another level now, and I really appreciate talking to you because it really interests me. And I'm actually a big fan of the podcast.
Thank you, man.
You know, he watches a little bit. I watch a lot, and I see how you guys structure everything, how you guys have, you know, some people on the side, Mark, etc.
Yeah.
Alex kills it, and kind of just how you guys really just took over, you know, not just Patreon when you started, but YouTube really is the game now, especially, you know, you got people like Rogan, you know, is just doing clips. He's kind of moved on to Spotify, kind of like left that lane for other than YouTubers and, you know, kind of influencer people, but actual people with good podcasts and good comedy. So that's kind of where Schulz and you kind of took up the space, I feel like. Yeah,
Andrew's obviously the first guy to figure out for comics we need to put our shit on YouTube. Yeah. And he's so smart at marketing. The one thing, during Corona, he and I called each other that weekend that everything was shutting down. And we were like, what are we going to do? And he and I basically had the same idea, which was if we are willing to meet in person and risk whatever the fuck this is, we could really capitalize because everybody else is going to be doing Zoom and that looks terrible. Yeah. So if we're willing to take the risk, meet in person, be as safe as we can everywhere outside of work, then we could really grow here. And then the numbers like tripled during quarantine. Also, by the time Andrew started doing his pieces, I think that added another, like we quadrupled with that. But just being there in quarantine was great.
It's interesting.
Thank you, G. Have a good night.
We're also just getting off stage, so there's fans asking for pictures.
All the time, comedy shows. I've been to India recently. I watched, you know, I was in that Russell Peters show. I'll tell you this, 100% without drinking and stuff, you're the best.
Thank you, G.
You know why? Because you think right there.
Thank you.
Excellent.
आपका नाम क्या है?
मेरा नाम Sam.
Sam. बस Sam. सुशील भैया मेरा नाम आकाश.
You are the best.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you. Namaskar.
Great praise, fresh off stage.
No, dude, I'm
yeah,
back,
10 minutes in.
Yeah.
Fucking retard. No, I do want to take it back a second. I was watching you on another podcast recently, The Roommates.
Yeah, those are my guys.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah.
We like them too. They're funny.
Yeah.
But you mentioned kind of back when it started, the way Flagrant 2 kind of transformed into what it is now.
Yeah.
It seems like you, back when I guess initially started, you know, Andrew was super busy and stuff, and it was kind of your
broke.
Push, and you were broke.
Yeah.
I guess 3 years ago you were what we are now. So I want to know why, when you pushed it, I guess, I feel like it seemed like you explained it, like you pushed it, the Patreon aspect. Andrew was starting to blow up a little bit. He was busy, and you're like, no, we got to take this to Patreon and really push on this. And it initially was sports, right? Pretty much, primarily.
Yeah, we talked about sports, and I still love talking about sports. I think Andrew liked sports, but Andrew loves sports like when he gets busy, sports gets pushed to the back burner. And that happens for me too, but I'm like, man, fuck, I need to read what's going on or whatever. Right. So it kind of morphed in that way that he just got so busy. But also, we knew sports was an easy conduit to talk about whatever you wanted. Like, I grew up, I always talk about that station, The Ticket, that I talk about all the time in Dallas. It's half sports, half, they call it guy talk.
Right.
And they're not like douchey at all, but just like stuff that guys will naturally talk about. Not like banging girls or whatever, but just like
man show shit.
Yeah, not even man show where it's so over the head, but it just is shit guys will naturally talk about.
Do you think it's necessary to start like that or do something like that for that audience? Is obviously the audience is what?
I think it was a good entry point.
Yeah.
It was an easy thing to talk about. And then once we started leaning on the Flagrant aspect of it, and then that was Andrew's comedy, all those fans kind of found it. And then Rogan, and then everything. And like, those guys were more interested in the flagrancy than the sports. And it became more of like just guys hanging out, and that's the compliment I get the most is just like when me and my friends hang out.
Yeah.
And that's how I always felt listening to the station back home. Again, they're not like talking about drinking and all that shit that we associate with. They'll talk about man shit, but it's not like toxic, to use that stupid word that I hate. But it's just like, yo, what does it sound like when you're talking to your friends? We tease each other. We talk about this thing or that thing, news stories, but what's funny about it, whatever. Like that kind of thing.
Isn't that like what a podcast is supposed to be? I feel like, plus you guys don't rely on guests. I feel like every podcast is a guest. It's just the podcast host or both of the podcast hosts.
Well, luckily
and
he and I had over a decade of just chemistry just from being friends.
Exactly.
I was lucky enough to be friends, and I knew he was going to be big. I didn't know if I knew I was going to be this big.
Right.
But I knew he was always going to be big, and he was always so funny and focused. But we just have a friendship. We have a brotherhood that's like lends itself to that. Kippy and Foley on Are You Garbage?
Yeah.
Similar chemistry where it's like, yo, these guys are just fucking homies with such a funny chemistry. Put a mic in front of them and let them talk and get the guests to get people to watch. Right. But also, like, they're funny and you'll fall in love with them, and then that's where it'll grow.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because, yeah, obviously you and Schulz go back like years and years. But in terms of like just starting to show off that way, just as a chemistry thing, just as a friendship thing, and then worrying about all the other aspects later, like bringing on a Mark and bringing on and buying a studio and filming and editing everything and having your camera guys at every show and really using every single ounce of what you do when you're doing comedy or podcast or anything as a really an entryway point to get anybody's eyes and basically just kind of filming everything and putting everything out there. Right. And then obviously the title Flagrant, you guys I'm pretty sure are about as flagrant as it gets. You know, Tim Dillon as well maybe, but like no, anything goes, and especially the shit Schulz says, and even you say more so, and obviously, and the way you shit on late night shows and shit like that, which I think is hilarious, and other stuff like that really lends itself to just people want like. They don't want anything cookie cutter. They don't want you to be hiding anything. I feel like some podcast hosts, they edit a lot of shit out. They don't want this to get out. You don't know who's going to hear it, obviously, with the cancel culture and everything like that. Yeah. And because I was just watching your last episode, I think you guys were talking about it a little bit. But it's just not worrying about that. And obviously, Charlemagne and Schulz and people have ran into shit like that. But when you are fully out there, you really can't fucking get canceled.